Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special episode of the Powerless Podcast, where I talk to journalist Abubaker Abed, who is a Palestinian journalist out of the Gaza Strip in Deir al Balah, which is a city in central Gaza. Abubaker and I discussed the reality on the ground during some of Israel's most recent escalations of violence and carnage with bombing and on the ground campaigns, as well as talking through a story that Abubaker did with a woman by the name of Zakia Dawood, who is a Nakba survivor who was forced to flee her home for the first time since 1948. Very recently, to go to the south, to a supposed safe zone, and her story, the trauma that is surrounding everyone within the Gaza Strip, those who are surviving, what the reality is like on the ground for them emotionally, physically, materially, and as well as Abubaker's message for people within the United States concerning the election tomorrow, from when this is being recorded, between presidential candidates, and the implications for Gaza and the world, unfortunately, either way, if either gets elected. So, again, this is a pretty heavy episode. I'm not giving a forewarning in the sense of any form of trigger warning or anything, because I think people need to hear these stories regardless of how they make you feel. But I just want to give a forewarning. This is an honest episode about the reality of life on the ground in Gaza from the perspective of Abubaker Abed, who was, again, originally a sports journalist. He's a 21-year-old journalist in Palestine, who since October 7th of last year is now documenting and showing the reality on the ground of people's lives in Gaza. So please go follow Abubaker Abed on all socials. It'll be in the links below. You can see his interviews, often with the Electronic Intifada. He's done a few recent articles that will also be linked from Dropsite News in the links below as well. So please go follow him, support him, and above all, free Palestine. Again, thank you so much for being here, Abubaker. I'm here with Abubaker Abed, who is a Palestinian journalist out of Deir al Balah in the central Gaza Strip. Um, I am very fortunate to have you on today. I've been following your work for some time. I know you started as a sports journalist prior to the genocide in Gaza that's been going on for over 390 days now, but you've done, I think, very vital and important work covering what you see on the ground, and just covering the reality for Palestinians within Gaza. I know that even last night for you, you put out some reporting through Twitter of current escalations and bombardments that you're hearing and seeing in the area. So I know this is a very loaded question, but just to start off, how are you doing today, and how are things looking with where you're at?
Well, I think thanks very much. It's my privilege to talk to you first. But yes, again, every single day in Gaza is a bloody day, unfortunately. More people are killed, more people are wounded. Hospitals are too overcrowded with are overwhelmed by the number of casualties every single day. Bombardments don't stop. And this is the same situation even here in the north, even there in the north, even here in the south. Everywhere across Gaza is subjected to relentless bombardments every single day. So to ask how are you is has really one definite answer, which is to be honest with you, we're not okay, particularly amid the ongoing famine that is hitting the entire population. Like we're really forced to, you know, we're really forced to use expired food, to depend on expired food, to depend on like flour that is rotten to eat, and struggle for a sip of water every single day. So it's just incredibly heartbreaking what is happening. So we're not okay, to be honest, but we are alhamdulillah on everything. Like we are good. We continue to we continue to resist under the most terrible circumstances. But yes, it's just that the genocide remains unabated across the entirety of the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, I mean, it like I said, it kind of feels weird to even ask that question, but I just know that things go escalate, but at the same time stay the same in sort of the dire circumstances so often that I think it's just good to know with where you're at today with how things have been. So thank you for going over that. There's just a few quick things I wanted to go over with you today to get your thoughts on. One would be some of the work that you've put out recently through Dropsite News, as well as your current reporting, as I just indicated earlier, with sort of the reality with the ongoing bombardments and occupation from IDF and the Israeli government, um, uh, as well as leading up here. As I told you before, this is I'm in the United States, and we have as you know uh,
Election.
something that yeah, an election coming up tomorrow that a lot of people get wrapped up in with politics, but from someone on the ground in Gaza who's directly affected by the government of the United States with Israel, I would just have a few questions with you there. So, to start off here, other than going over how the situation currently is unfolding with where you're at in the south and in Gaza and the central of Gaza Strip, there's a few articles that you put out recently with Dropsite News, which is an article or a news organization that I've followed and supported for quite a while since it started. And I've really loved your pieces there. And one that I particularly read through numerous times since you've put it out just a few days ago um, was talking to the Nakba survivor, Zakia Dawood, who has lived in Jabaliya for over 80 years. You talked to her both about the forced displacements that she's been under over the past year or more now, and the kind of conjunction between that and the Nakba and her thoughts on that. So, if you don't mind, for listeners that have not been able to read this piece or have not checked it out on Dropside News, I highly recommend everybody go read Abubaker's pieces there. But can you kind of just give the details of that interaction, or just the interactions with that, and in general of the sort of stories you're getting from people that have had
I
to be forcibly displaced and things of that nature throughout the past year here.
Yeah, I think like the very first thing that people need to understand is that we're not doing journalism here. We're documenting a genocide inflicted upon us. Journalism is just about covering the news and the realities, but it's not being in an active war zone, in an active genocide zone. It's not a war zone even, where you could be killed at any point along with your family. We could be targeted because Israel is targeting everyone and every place. But the main point here is that we as journalists, we are traumatized, we're starved, we're being starved, we're traumatized, we're brutalized, and then we go to other people, listen from them, and hear from them, hear their stories. And their stories capture so much pain, capture so much agony, misery. And, a listener will take so much from that misery. So it's a very arduous journey to do a story here in Gaza. And the written stories are much difficult, are much more difficult than just saying a report, because you're gonna focus on how to tell the story of a very ostracized man or woman or child or girl or boy here in Gaza. So for Zakiya in particular, she was, this is the first time that she had to flee her house in Jabaliya in northern Gaza. So since 1948, we're talking about more than 80 years that she hasn't been forced to flee her house. And her journey, her trek from Jabaliya, from the north to the south, this is the barbarity of what Israel is about. That she had to walk tens of kilometers from the north to the south to Deir al Balah just to seek some sort of safety. And by the way, she had many health problems, so she can't really walk. She can't really, resisting these hellish living circumstances. And then on the street, on her way for An elderly woman of 82 years old, that is a lot on her health. That she walks on the streets, quadcopters, Israeli jet fighters, flying over her head all the time, and she could be killed if she looks right, if she looks, if she looks right, if she looks left, or anywhere. And then on the streets as well, there are many corpses, dismembered bodies. Even she saw a mother and her child run down the street, and then she could not even walk over the horses. So the roads were not even. So they were really rough. So she had to go left, right, and she had to change directions, divert things, etc. So she could walk. And you could really read it in the article and this piece that she really thought. She told me, and she said that she really cried. She told me that I didn't have the energy to endure all this, to take all this. And she started crying. She started suffering in pain. And for me, I'm just a 21-year-old person. I'm so young man that I'm going through such an incredibly difficult time. And this is not the first war. There have been 5 wars before. It's not the first war in Gaza. And then I should listen and absorb this pain, share this pain. Well, I am myself pained. I myself hurt from inside because of the ongoing barbarism inflicted upon me by the Israeli military. Then I don't know what I can tell you. For an elderly woman of 82 years old, when she had some sort of ideas that she wanted to suicide herself, to kill herself and go and throw herself into the sea because she could not really deal with this so much pain, that can tell you what Israel is. This is not only a war, a physical war in Gaza, but it's also a mental war in Gaza, because I do believe that the mental toll on us, on every single one in Gaza, is going to be unprecedented. And this war ends. We don't have to go so far, but surely every single one in Gaza is a tragedy. So for Zakiya, she symbolizes the history of Palestine, because she's one of the very few Nakba survivors that are still living and uh, and surviving the current genocide. She hasn't survived yet. She might be killed at any time because she is still trapped and stuck in Gaza. And even though the Israeli military is saying and is claiming that the South is a safe humanitarian zone, but it actually is not. We could see many videos coming out from Deir al Balah, coming out from Khan Yunis, where a lot of people were killed. Even for Shaban, because I read a story in news about Shaban. Shaban was killed and immolated in Deir al Balah at Al hospital. And hospitals here are targeted. So what I can tell you about Zakiya specifically is that she was subject a target for military that that the Israeli army even dared surround her with military dogs. So it didn't like what an elderly woman, what kind of threat, I mean, an elderly woman would pose to the Israeli army. She's unable to move. What kind of a threat she would really pose to you, so that you surround her with military dogs? So if people don't want to realize that Israel is a very barbaric state that is inflicting tourism upon us, then you're wrong. Even here, what I need people to understand that we are not a party to this war. For example, I'm not a party to this war. A lot of people are not a party to this war. Don't put like the Hamas excuse in and all, just like justify the killing of these people. And even one more important point is that they didn't even the Israeli army forces, the Israeli Canadian forces, when they saw kid which she was imploring, crying in pain, imploring them to help her, take her to her sons in the south. So her sons really didn't have all of the hopes, all of her sons' hopes were completely dashed because they lost contact with her. She lost her phone on her way because for another woman, she cannot really walk on any elderly woman across the globe wouldn't really walk for 1 kilometer on foot. That is a lot of pain. That is a lot of someone's health. So for Zakiya, others, now she is in Deir al Balah. She thought that Deir al Balah would be more of a really good haven. Unfortunately, it's not. Attacks continue in the territory, and here the famine is striking the entirety of the Gaza Strip, especially in the south. So she knew, she expected at least to have some bread, to have some food. But when she came here, there is nothing. She needs food. She's now, Gia is now taking painkillers to manage to stay, to manage to forget about the pain, because whenever the images come across her mind, she starts crying. And that's what her grandchildren told me, that I cannot deal with her. She cries every time when she remembers what she saw. So let's talk about this issue, which is this, and ask ourselves this question. When Zakiya, or well, even Zakiya, forget about these horrific scenes that she was forced and obligated to see, she will never ever do. And that's what happened, because I do remember, like 2 days ago, when I was at the Al Martyrs Hospital inside the mall after the deadly attacks on the Nusayrat refugee camp, there was a young girl, she's a child, Ethan, whose head was blown up. And when I really had the courage. I wish I didn't do that, but when I really had the courage to uncover her face and put the blanket away, I was utterly devastated. You know, like, it's mind blowing. It's mind blowing in a very negative way. Like, I don't know, but if you come and see how people are being disempowered, even they are being dismembered, they're being cut into pieces, into slices, and how even all the corpses, like, we have just a tiny percentage of those killed on a very daily basis by the Israeli regime, who come to hospitals, to Gaza's hospitals, as intact corpses. This is one of the main points that we need to tell people about, that most corpses, after being killed by the Israeli military in its ferocious attacks across the entirety of the Gaza Strip, they come to Gaza's hospitals as completely damaged and shredded corpses. They don't come as intact corpses. That's why we need to talk about this. That even a lot of people, because the Israeli army is encircling the Gaza Strip, encircling the besieged enclave, particularly, in particular, some areas, some certain areas, like the northwest camp of Al Nusayrat, etc. So some people who were killed were gunned down by Israeli quadcopters, for example, or who were staying, or were still staying under the rubble. People don't manage, or didn't manage, or haven't managed even, to rescue these bodies and to retrieve their bodies and bury them. So some people were buried under the ground. Some people were buried under the rubble of their houses. Because my neighbor's child was targeted November last year, exactly 1 year ago. He is still under the rubble. He's just a 6-year-old child. This is my neighbor's child. He's still under the rubble. His house was targeted and razed to the ground 1 year exactly. Exactly, the date was November 21st, 2023. So we're marking 1 year where his family put on the ground, put on the wall, the only standing wall of their house. They wrote up on the house wall, on this sole standing wall. They wrote his name, Wa'il Al-Za'lan, so people could remember who's still under the rubble. And that is not the story of only my neighbor, but it's the story of many family homes. There are other families whose many members, whose many sons, children, daughters, fathers, etc., are still stuck under the rubble. That's been a year. They are still under the rubble, buried under their house. So look what it means tomorrow, what it will mean tomorrow for, for their relatives, for their surviving members when this war ends. Although they may not survive, look at what it will mean for them when they rescue the bodies of their fathers and their loved ones, shredded into pieces after 1 year. They will have their corpses utterly decaying. Look at what people need with them. It's just unbearable misery.
Yeah, I think that's something, a lot of people in the West or where I'm from, that follow this and are trying to push whatever minimal power it seems that the government will listen to us at all. A lot of us, we see the horror, right? We like from clips and things like that, or you see reporting from you on the reality of the ground. But I think a lot of times people lose not just the horrificness of the death and destruction and carnage, but also the lasting effects on loved ones and family members and people that don't even have the opportunity to grieve, the opportunity to have funeral rites, the opportunity to have services and grieve as a community, because so much
Exactly.
dehumanization and so much carnage goes on a daily basis that people that would otherwise
It's
take that time.
unfathomable. You're right.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah, it's truly something that put into my perspective as someone so far away from this, really just it's un as you I think you use this word, it's unfathomable. I cannot comprehend that being people's like daily lives. So again, appreciate you going over that. I know that's a tough thing to talk about and live every day, but it's a
Brandon,
important thing for people to hear.
yeah, absolutely. And I'm sorry to cut you off, but Brandon, the problem is that it's been now we're nearly getting into the 14th month of the genocide, where people are still being killed, they're still being killed in mass, and the world is just watching over. Like, how many people should be killed so you would move? How many people should be like shredded to pieces, torn into pieces? How many people should be burnt alive like Shaban so you would move? So you can move and act and stop what is happening. Stop this insanity that people are going through. We need years, and I'm not sure if we will heal up, if our wounds will heal up from this barbarity inflicted upon us, from this barbarity that we are being subjected to go through every single day, every single hour, every single moment. Like, while even I'm speaking to you, I'm expecting at any moment that a bombardment could occur anywhere else nearby. That is the reality that people need to know. We are simply traumatized. If you really talk to someone from in Gaza, from a heart to heart, tell him, like, ask him, tell me your thoughts from the heart. Don't speak like you are speaking very formally, because I wouldn't really come up on an interview. You could probably see my AI interviews and others in the last time. I'm not gonna appear on an interview as a superhero. I'm not a
Right.
superhero. I'm a human being at first. No, I'm gonna tell you the inside, the inner feelings that I have in my heart. I'm not gonna conceal that. I'm gonna unleash it. You know. But if you speak to someone from Gaza, from heart to heart, tell him, what would you really like? What would you really love to have, to dream about? Tell him and listen to the atrocities. Listen to stories that you would never ever imagine, that have never even been written in books, in fictional stories, or anywhere else. That is what I want to tell you. They have just made our dreams very simple. Like, people are now dreaming about, I mean, just, I want to go to a restaurant. I want to have an outing with my friends. I want to go to the sea, have some popcorn, have some crisps, something like this, and enjoy an afternoon with my friends on the beach or a sunset. I want to go and to my uncles, have some talk with them, have some laughing with them. These are dreams. They are not dreams really, and I know for the entire population of the world they're not dreams. They're just simple things, they're just some normal things. It's a human thing. But people in the western world you are talking about don't look at us as human beings. We are subhumans. We are animal humans as they claim. But look, I'm going to tell you, shame is going to haunt them forever. We are the humans and they're not. We are the humans, and the history and the reality and the future will prove that tomorrow. I'm not talking here about those people like you, Brandon, like others who really support Palestine, who show unwavering support of the Palestinian people, and understand that this context is not about Hamas. It's not. It's never been about Hamas. Again, I'm not a party to this war. That man is not a party to this war. If it's about Hamas, what is the sin of more than 17,000 children killed, murdered by the Israeli army since the start of this genocide? What is their sin? What have they done so you could kill them? Yesterday, like just 2 days ago or 3 days ago, a 5-month-old infant named Tamir Mohsen in Al Nusra refugee camp. He was born into the war, and during the war, he's 5 months old. The genocide was on, and the genocide is on, and he was killed 3 days ago. What did he do to the Israeli military, to the Israeli army occupation forces, so they killed him in cold blood? Just a simple question. What did he do? It's very, I mean, inhuman, indiscriminate. It's very appalling, and it hurts but much more when those Western people, oh, those Western people, let me say, those cheap sellout journalists, when they talk about us, they dehumanize us, and they cover up the genocide unfolding in the territory here. It hurts so much inside. But history will never forget them. History will never forgive them as well. They will always be remembered as a shame to the industry. They're not journalists. They are just laundering the genocide against innocent people in Gaza because they are simply cheap. When you are a principled person, all people will love you, all people will admire you. But when you are just a cheap person and you change your principles from time to another, then you can understand what reality that you have, what belief, what convictions you have inside you. But it's simply harm. It's so much harm on us. And we know we are hurt. But that is another point that the Western mainstream media is liable and one of the many reasons of the continuity of Israel's genocide in Gaza. That is what people need to know. Because everyone in Gaza has a tragedy, at least one tragedy. Like other people have many tragedies, apparently. Like they have two, three tragedies. I know I know from a Ramlau family in Gaza. At the start of the war, he lost his father was killed, his house was reduced to rubble, his two sisters were killed at the same time. A month later, his other sister was killed. 2 months later, his other brother was killed. 3 months later, his two uncles were killed. 4 months later, his other two aunts were killed. 6 months later, like 5 or 6 nephews or nieces of him were murdered. Then 9 months later, his other two uncles were also killed from on his mother's side. And then 2 months later, now he lost the entire family. 2 months later, he was himself killed. That is a full erasure of an entire family. Full erasure. You know, there are families here in Gaza who lost more than 100 people. I can count to you. Al Qud family in Deir al Balah, although they are in a so-called safe humanitarian zone, more than 100 people from them were killed. A Ramlawi family in Gaza, more than 100 were killed. Abu Isa family, more than 100 were killed. And I don't know, but there are other families. But these three families I remember so vividly, and how much loss they had to endure and they had to grieve. This can tell you what this war is about. But again, I'm just gonna say it in every single interview. I'm not gonna lose hope. I'm just a young man. There are many reasons to smile. We're smiling. And if you think for any moment that we're not smiling, no, we're smiling, we're hopeful, and we hope that this war will end. We will emerge from this with so much hope. And we believe that you are a reflection of our hope. You are the support of one of the most dignified, I mean, dignified and important causes in the world. And we believe in you. We feel hope with you. And we want to be together to end the corruption and the occupation of the world, because I believe that Gaza is the start and the backbone of freeing the entire world.
I 100% agree with you on that. And again, from the bottom of my heart, I really, really appreciate this time that you've given me to go over these things, and to really,
It's
as you
my
said,
pleasure.
give give a very human and just very real inside perspective on what's going on a day-to-day um, basis in Gaza. The last question I have before I'll end our time here, and again, really appreciate all of your insight,
It's my pleasure,
is
Brandon.
is it feels kind of trivial in some ways to bring up, but as I said, in the
Go
United
ahead.
States here, we have an election tomorrow, two presidential candidates of major parties that both apparently just have a competition on who can be the most bloodthirsty, the most um the
Exactly.
the the most the most coalescing behind Israel's genocide in Gaza, and not only in Gaza now, but in several other countries: Lebanon, Syria, Yemen. It continues on and on. What would your message be, just as someone dealing with the realities of these people, to
Honestly,
Americans when it comes to an election here?
thank you so much for asking this question, because I know many people wait for me to give an opinion, to give a comment on the elections. But if you want to be me to be honest, if you need me to be honest, I just want to think for the meritorious, for the noble American people like you, and those standing with the right, those standing with the justice, with the oppressed people. I just want to think for them, which is to be freed from these corrupt leaders. And to be honest with you, I don't want Kamala to win. I don't want Trump to win. And excuse me, I don't want Jill to win as well, because I know that she is disguising herself as someone we're in the cafe. Because I'm 100% sure that we won't let her win these elections. I know she's gonna end the war in Gaza. I totally respect her, but not very confident that she will end things, because we all understand that the Israeli lobby, the Zionist lobby, is stored in the United States. So it's a very hard matter that she is going to step up as president of the United States, and then she's going to keep up her morals and her principles and the ongoing pressure by the Israelis. So I don't think she will append the the equation of the world, because America plays a major role in controlling the entire globe, it controls every ally of her across the globe, the US, like the UK, France, and others. But if you need me to be honest, I just want a candidate that is honest, that can really help people, help Americans to free themselves from all this corruption. Because I understand and I hear from people in the United States that there's so much corruption, not only in terms of Gaza, no, but I also need you to be freed from the other parts of the corruption, the other matters that you're not okay with. And I'm 100% confident that not all Americans do feel free, do feel comfortable living in the United States for so many reasons. I've been listening to many people that they are struggling to live in the United States because there are many difficult matters that haven't been solved, and there are many selfish people that think about themselves, that they don't care about others. And I know that this sort of presidency and you know, this sort of racial hierarchy affects the low class people. I mean, not low class really, but this is the structure and the ruling system of any country around the world. But again, all I want is for the American people, putting aside the Gaza part. I just want for the American people, the noble American people, those meritorious ones, those who believe in rights, in the rights to freedom, the rights of human rights and everything. I just want them to be freed from all this corruption. I don't want any of these presidents to.
Absolutely agreed. Abu Bakr, thanks so much for doing this. I hope you stay safe today and every day. And as always, just thank you for your work, and thank you for giving your experience to the world.